The stars had witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations. Empires had been forged from dying suns. Entire species had disappeared into history without leaving behind a single transmission. Across the known galaxy, power was measured by the size of a fleet, the age of a civilization, and the worlds that bowed beneath its banners. By every known standard, humanity should never have mattered. According to the official records of the Galactic Council, Earth was little more than a young, unstable world on the edge of explored space. Its people had only recently mastered faster-than-light travel. Their fleet was laughably small. Their colonies were few. Their influence was practically non-existent. The Council gave Earth a simple designation: primitive world. Low strategic value. Most species never thought about humanity again. That would become the greatest mistake in galactic history. The Hall of Stars floated in silent orbit around the ancient world of Asterion, home of the Galactic Council. Millions of lights illuminated the enormous chamber where representatives from over 300 civilizations gathered beneath a ceiling that displayed the living map of the galaxy itself. Entire wars had begun inside this room. Entire empires had ended with a single vote. Today seemed no different. At the center platform stood High Chancellor Verex, an elder of the Illyrian collective whose silver skin shimmered beneath the chamber lights. His voice echoed through every translation system. Next item. Sector 9. Sol System. Several delegates barely looked up. One reptilian ambassador laughed quietly. The humans again? Another delegate adjusted his holographic records. They request equal trade status. A chorus of amused whispers spread across the chamber. Equal trade status? For Earth? It sounded almost insulting. Verex opened the report. Species designation: human. Civilization age: young. Military rating: Class 12. Economic influence: minimal. Strategic importance: negligible. One sentence summarized everything. Recommendation: primitive world classification remains unchanged. The vote took less than 6 seconds. 307 green lights. 0 objections. Earth remained officially primitive. The decision barely deserved applause. It was simply another administrative task. Far from the council chamber, on a quiet blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star, humanity received the news. No protests filled the streets. No angry speeches appeared across the planetary networks. No military mobilization followed. Instead, people simply went back to work. Factories continued operating. Freighters continued leaving orbital docks. Scientists continued disappearing into classified research facilities no civilian had ever seen. To every foreign observer, humans appeared strangely calm, almost prepared. 3 light-years away, aboard an observation vessel belonging to the Taylor Dominion, Commander Zell watched Earth through long-range surveillance arrays. He frowned. Increase magnification. His officer obeyed. Earth's orbital stations rotated peacefully. Cargo vessels moved with perfect organization. Nothing appeared unusual, yet something bothered him. Where are their patrol fleets? The tactical officer searched again. Only 23 confirmed military vessels. Zell narrowed his eyes. Impossible. Every civilization protected its homeworld with hundreds of warships, especially one located so close to unexplored regions. Earth barely defended itself. Unless there was nothing worth defending. The report practically wrote itself. Human military capability remains insignificant. He transmitted it directly to Dominion intelligence. Within minutes, the file joined thousands of others reaching the same conclusion. Humanity posed no threat. No one questioned why every spy report somehow felt incomplete. Deep beneath the Himalayas, nearly 6 kilometers below solid rock, a door weighing 12,000 tons slowly opened. No satellite knew it existed. No alien scanner had ever detected its power signature. The entrance revealed an underground city stretching beyond the horizon. Artificial suns illuminated forests growing beneath the mountain. Rail systems carried impossible materials toward construction yards larger than entire capital cities. Workers never wore military uniforms. Most looked like ordinary engineers. Robotic cranes lifted hull sections hundreds of meters long. Fusion reactors glowed beneath unfinished structures. The sound of welding echoed endlessly. A young technician looked upward as another section locked perfectly into place. Section 42 complete. An older engineer nodded. Excellent. When do they activate? The older man smiled slightly. When humanity needs them. The technician looked confused. Needs what? The engineer stared across the enormous chamber. Thousands of identical structures disappeared into darkness. You'll know soon enough. Elsewhere, beneath the Pacific Ocean, another hidden facility operated in absolute silence. Massive assembly lines built engines unlike anything listed within public human databases. Artificial intelligences coordinated millions of microscopic manufacturing drones. Entire reactor cores floated inside magnetic chambers. Every machine carried the same symbol. Not the flag of any nation. Not the emblem of any corporation. Only a single silver phoenix spreading its wings across a field of stars. One scientist paused beside a transparent display. Production report? The AI answered instantly. Fleet Assembly Group 12. 93% complete. Group 13 entering final construction. The scientist nodded. No delays. We're still ahead of schedule. He looked toward a gigantic blast door. Beyond it rested something so enormous that even the chamber could not fully contain it. He whispered almost to himself. They still think we're primitive. Another researcher smiled. Good. Let them. Across the galaxy, the Drakari Imperium expanded without resistance. For centuries they had conquered weaker civilizations. Planet after planet. System after system. Entire governments surrendered before the first battle even began. Resistance was expensive. Submission was easier. Supreme Marshal Kaler stood upon the bridge of the battleship Iron Dominion. Its observation window overlooked more than 2,000 warships assembled around the conquered world of Karos. The planet burned beneath them. Another victory. Another empire erased. An officer approached. Marshal. Back on Earth. Night covered much of the planet. Cities glittered peacefully beneath the stars. Children slept. Families shared quiet dinners. Astronomers continued scanning distant galaxies. Everything looked normal. Then, at precisely 2 o'clock coordinated Earth time, every secure military communication network on the planet activated simultaneously. Encrypted channels opened. Thousands of commanders received the same message. No explanation. Only 3 words. Condition Atlas confirmed. Across hidden installations buried beneath mountains. Inside forgotten lunar facilities. Within silent shipyards drifting beyond Pluto. Countless men and women stopped what they were doing. Some smiled. Others took deep breaths. After nearly 2 centuries of preparation, the moment they had trained for was finally approaching. The galaxy believed humanity was weak. The galaxy believed humanity was young. The galaxy believed humanity had almost no fleet at all. Humanity had spent generations making sure everyone believed exactly that. Because sometimes, the greatest weapon wasn't the fleet your enemies could see. It was the one they never imagined existed. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the solar system, thousands of dormant beacons, hidden for centuries between silent stars, received a single encrypted signal. For the first time in generations, they awakened. Our expansion route reaches Sector 9 within 2 cycles. Kaler barely looked away from the burning planet. What civilizations remain there? The officer projected a hologram. Several minor protectorates. Independent mining colonies. And 1 primitive species. The hologram rotated. Earth. Kaler chuckled. Humans. I've heard stories. The officer smiled. Mostly exaggerations. They're considered harmless. Kaler folded his hands behind his back. Excellent. We'll need fresh resources before pushing toward the core worlds. Mark Sol for future acquisition. No dramatic declaration followed. No hatred. No anger. To Kaler, Earth wasn't an enemy. It was simply another resource waiting to be claimed. One insignificant world among thousands. The order spread through the Imperial fleet. Operation Silent Harvest. Estimated resistance. Minimal. Estimated casualties. Negligible. Estimated campaign duration. For standard days. Not a single strategist questioned those numbers. The encrypted signal crossed the solar system faster than any civilian technology should have allowed. It passed silently through Earth's orbital infrastructure. It echoed beneath the oceans. It traveled through forgotten relay stations, hidden inside asteroids that every alien survey had classified as lifeless rock. Then, one by one, ancient systems awoke. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, lights that had remained dark for nearly 80 years flickered to life. Gigantic blast doors, buried beneath kilometers of lunar bedrock, slowly separated with a thunderous roar. Dust, untouched for decades, drifted into the artificial atmosphere as thousands of autonomous machines resumed their work without hesitation. Massive fabrication lines began moving again. Fusion forges ignited. Quantum assembly drones swarmed over unfinished hulls that dwarfed the largest warships known to the Galactic Council. The silence of the hidden city disappeared beneath the rhythm of machinery that had waited generations for this moment. A calm synthetic voice echoed through every chamber. Atlas Protocol acknowledged. Final construction phase initiated. Estimated fleet readiness. 97.3%. No celebration followed. No cheers echoed through the tunnels. Everyone simply returned to work. They had rehearsed this day their entire lives. Far above the moon, inside the civilian headquarters of the United Earth government, President Amelia Hayes entered a conference room secured behind 6 independent layers of biometric authentication. Waiting for her were only 9 people. None represented individual nations. There were no political parties, no corporate executives, only the leaders of the Atlas Directorate, the organization that officially did not exist. A holographic projection of the solar system rotated above the central table. Admiral Elias Ward stood beside it. His gray hair reflected decades of service, but his eyes remained sharp. "The signal has reached every classified installation," he reported. Hayes nodded. "And the beacons?" Ward touched the display. Thousands of tiny blue lights appeared far beyond Pluto. "They're responding." A quiet breath escaped the room. For almost 200 years, no one had known if the network still functioned. Now every beacon was coming online exactly as designed. General Sofia Navarro crossed her arms. "So, it's finally happening," Ward answered without emotion. "It always was. Nearly 2 centuries earlier, humanity had learned a lesson no other civilization ever knew. It began with a single exploration vessel, the UNS Horizon. Officially, the mission had been declared a navigational accident. The public believed the ship had vanished during an experimental faster-than-light jump. That was only half the truth. The Horizon had emerged nearly 3,000 light-years from Earth. There, drifting through the darkness between galaxies, its crew discovered something impossible. An ancient battlefield, not hundreds of years old, not thousands, millions. The remains of civilizations so advanced that even their wreckage defied human understanding. Entire moons had been converted into weapons. Stars had been artificially extinguished. Fragments of ships larger than continents floated silently through endless space. The Horizon recovered only one object before returning home. A black crystal no larger than a human hand. Everything changed after that. The crystal contained no language, no maps, no instructions, only memories, artificial memories. Scientists spent decades learning how to interpret them. Eventually, the truth emerged. Long before the Galactic Council existed, the galaxy had belonged to another civilization. Not an empire, not a federation, something older, something far more powerful. They had disappeared almost overnight. Destroyed by an enemy whose name no longer existed in history. Only one warning remained encoded inside the crystal. They always return. Humanity never shared the discovery. Not with the Council. Not with its allies. not even with most of its own population. Instead, Earth began preparing. Quietly, patiently, secretly, the Atlas Initiative was born. Officially, governments invested in infrastructure. In reality, entire mountain ranges became hidden factories. Mining colonies extracted resources far beyond public accounting records. Every civilian cargo fleet secretly transported materials toward classified construction sites scattered throughout the solar system. Every budget that appeared wasteful. Every failed research project. Every mysterious deep space expedition. They all served one purpose: preparing for a war that everyone else had forgotten. Generation after generation accepted the burden without knowing the entire truth. Engineers designed ships they would never see completed. Scientists developed weapons they hoped would never be fired. Children entered military academies believing they were studying history. In reality, they were rehearsing the future. Back in the present, the Atlas Directorate reviewed incoming reports. Director Maytan looked across the tactical display. "Our public fleet?" Ward answered immediately. "Remain exactly where they are. Let every foreign observer keep watching. No unusual movements." General Navarro smiled. "We're still pretending." Ward looked directly at her. "We've been pretending for 193 years. We can continue a little longer." The room understood. If alien intelligence networks noticed sudden military activity, they would investigate. Humanity had sacrificed generations to maintain the illusion. It would not break now. Meanwhile, Commander Zell aboard the Taylor observation vessel continued monitoring Earth. His sensors detected increased energy production across several continents. He frowned. "Industrial output has increased." His operations officer shrugged. "Civilian manufacturing. Probably preparing for trade negotiations." Zell accepted the explanation. After all, primitive worlds often expanded industry when seeking economic recognition. Nothing seemed unusual. He filed another report. Human activity remains non-threatening. Again, no one questioned it. Far beyond Neptune, an asteroid that appeared completely ordinary suddenly split in half. The rock shell drifted away. Hidden beneath it rested an enormous military dock stretching almost 60 kilometers in length. Rows upon rows of unfinished battleships floated inside magnetic construction frames. Artificial suns illuminated the facility. Thousands of robotic workers accelerated into motion. One by one, power cores activated. Blue light spread across the hulls like flowing rivers. On the command deck, a young officer stared through reinforced glass. He had graduated only 6 months earlier. This was the first time he had ever seen the fleet. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "I thought they were just stories." Captain Miriam Holt smiled without looking away. So did everyone else. The officer counted the visible ships, then stopped. There were too many. His display reached 1,000 before switching to scientific notation. "How? How did no one find this?" Holt answered quietly. "Because they were never looking." Across the hidden facilities of humanity, the same process unfolded. Mars, Europa, Titan, the Kuiper Belt. Invisible stations emerged from carefully disguised asteroid fields. Stealth satellites unfolded from dormant positions. Communication arrays that had remained silent for decades synchronized across billions of kilometers. Humanity was not building an army. The army had been waiting all along. It simply needed permission to wake. Far away, aboard the Iron Dominion, Supreme Marshal Kaler received another intelligence briefing. The Sol system remains unchanged. He scanned the report for only a few seconds. No military expansion? None. No fleet mobilization? None. Kaler laughed softly. They truly believe they're safe. The bridge officers joined his amusement. To conquer Earth would be routine. A brief campaign. A useful source of resources. Nothing more. He turned toward the panoramic viewport where thousands of Imperial warships sailed in perfect formation. "Prepare the first and third battle groups. We leave for Sol within 48 hours. Across the fleet, engines began warming. Weapons entered combat readiness. The banners of the Drakari Imperium unfolded against the stars. For them, it was merely another conquest. For humanity, it was the moment an almost 2-century-long deception would finally be tested. And hidden beyond the orbit of Pluto, where no alien telescope had ever looked closely enough, a colossal structure, larger than many space stations of the Galactic Council, slowly rotated toward the distant stars. Its engines glowed for the first time in 74 years. Along its dark metallic hull, one line of silver letters became visible as dormant lights awakened. UNS Aegis. The first flagship of a fleet the galaxy believed had never existed. Its awakening was silent. Its purpose was not. The age of hiding was coming to an end. The stars had a way of hiding the largest storms. To the civilizations of the Galactic Council, the Sol system remained exactly what it had always been, a quiet, insignificant corner of the galaxy occupied by an ambitious but inexperienced species. Merchant convoys continued their scheduled routes. Scientific vessels drifted through neighboring sectors. Tourist liners crossed council space without interruption. Nothing suggested that history was about to change. Nothing, except the silence. Supreme Marshal Kaler stood before a three-dimensional projection of the Sol system. Every planet, moon, and orbital station floated in precise detail above the command table aboard the Iron Dominion. Around him, the senior commanders of the Drakari Imperium waited for their final orders. General Rask folded his massive arms across his armored chest. Our scouts confirm the Council's assessment. Earth possesses fewer than 30 confirmed military vessels capable of deep space combat. Another officer smiled. Most of them are outdated. Kaler studied the hologram for several long seconds. I dislike easy victories. The officers exchanged confused glances. My marshal. When an enemy appears weak, Kaler said quietly, either they truly are, or they want you to believe they are. General Rask chuckled. Humans? Deception on that scale. Kaler looked at him. Never underestimate instinct. But he dismissed the thought with a wave of his hand. No civilization classified as primitive could hide an interstellar military. Proceed with Operation Silent Harvest. Immediately, holographic battle routes illuminated the projection. The first battle group would strike Mars. The third would seize Earth's orbital defenses. The fifth would secure the asteroid mining belt. Within 72 hours, the Sol system was expected to belong to the Imperium. No one in the room believed the timetable would fail. Millions of kilometers away, the first Imperial fleet entered faster than light transit. Space folded around thousands of warships. Blue-white energy swallowed the armada before the stars returned to darkness. The invasion had begun. On Earth, the Atlas Directorate had already detected the departure. Not because of spies. Not because of intercepted communications. But because humanity had been watching the Imperium for decades. Inside the Atlas Strategic Operations Center beneath the Alps, hundreds of analysts stood before a wall-sized holographic display. Red symbols appeared one after another. Imperial fleet departure confirmed. Estimated strength, 2,318 warships. Estimated arrival, 41 hours. No panic spread through the room. Instead, Admiral Elias Ward simply nodded. They're right on schedule. President Amelia Hayes looked toward him. So it begins. Ward answered calmly. No. It began 193 years ago. This, he looked at the approaching fleet icons, is only the first test. Elsewhere, hidden beneath the icy surface of Europa, another forgotten facility came alive. The chamber was so vast that clouds had formed beneath its artificial ceiling. Suspended within magnetic fields rested 6 enormous vessels unlike anything humanity had ever revealed. They were not battleships. They were fortress ships. Each measured nearly 15 kilometers from bow to stern. Their armor was layered with materials recovered from the ancient battlefield discovered by the UNS Horizon. Weapons remained concealed beneath smooth metallic plating. One engineer stared upward in silent awe. Although he had worked inside the facility for 12 years, He had never seen the ships powered on. A deep vibration rolled through the chamber. Then another. Blue energy raced along the hulls. Thousands of lights ignited simultaneously. The lead vessel transmitted its first message in 70 years. Fortress Group Orion Online. Awaiting command authorization. Back on the moon, Captain Miriam Holt walked across the bridge of the UNS Aegis. Crew members filled every station with practiced precision. No one hurried. No one shouted. Every movement reflected years of preparation. A young communications officer looked up. Captain, beacon network synchronization complete. 100%. Holt nodded. Fleet command. Connected. The enormous tactical display expanded. At first, only the familiar solar system appeared. Then, one by one, hidden formations materialized. A shipyard beyond Neptune. Another inside Saturn's rings. 3 concealed fleets drifting among Trojan asteroids. Dozens of stealth stations. Hundreds of logistics platforms. Thousands of warships. The display continued expanding. The tactical computer finally stopped counting. Instead, one line appeared across the bottom of the screen. Atlas Fleet Status. Operational. Several younger officers simply stared. Most had trained aboard simulators. Very few had ever seen the complete picture. Lieutenant Aaron Pierce whispered almost unconsciously. "My God!" Holt smiled faintly. "No. This." She looked across the impossible fleet. "Is humanity." Far away, aboard a civilian transport crossing Council territory, Ambassador Lorien of the Vesk Republic reviewed routine diplomatic correspondence. Most reports concerned trade disputes and border negotiations. One encrypted message caught his attention. It came from an independent merchant captain near Seoul. The message was unusually brief. "Human shipping traffic has disappeared." Lorien frowned. Disappeared? He requested additional information. The reply arrived minutes later. No civilian cargo routes. No commercial freighters. Every transport entering Seoul has turned back. For the first time that day, unease settled in his mind. Primitive civilizations didn't suspend interstellar commerce without reason. Back in the Atlas Directorate, Director Maytan observed the same reports. Civilian evacuation complete. Ward nodded. Loss estimates? Less than 0.03%. President Hayes looked around the room. Have we been detected? No. They think commerce simply slowed. Ward folded his hands. Excellent. He pressed a control panel. Across the display, a new command appeared. Phase 1 deception complete. Immediately afterward, another order followed. Prepare Atlas Fleet for deployment. No alarms sounded. No dramatic countdown began. Only silent acknowledgements. Every commander already knew what to do. Meanwhile, Commander Zell aboard the Taylor observation ship noticed something unusual. Earth's public defense fleet had not increased, but its orbital traffic had become strangely organized. Civilian vessels vanished from the system. Mining platforms ceased broadcasting. Even orbital maintenance drones disappeared. He replayed the sensor logs. Something wasn't right. He contacted Dominion Intelligence. I recommend additional surveillance. The response arrived almost instantly. Recommendation denied. Priority remains low. Zell looked back toward Earth. For reasons he couldn't explain, he suddenly wished someone had listened. 41 hours became 30. 30 became 20. Across the darkness between stars, the Drakari Armada advanced relentlessly toward the Sol system. More than 2,000 warships traveled in perfect formation. Carrier groups, siege cruisers, planetary assault vessels, heavy dreadnoughts. Enough firepower to erase entire civilizations. Their confidence never wavered. Every simulation predicted complete victory. Every strategist agreed. Earth would fall. Inside the Atlas Operations Center, another countdown reached 0. A single encrypted transmission spread across every hidden installation. Every ship, every station, every commander. The message contained only 4 words. Open the iron vaults. Across the solar system, gigantic armored doors began sliding apart. Asteroids split open. Frozen moons revealed hidden docks. Stealth fields flickered and vanished. Warships that had remained invisible for generations slowly emerged into the light of distant suns. 1, then 10, then hundreds, then thousands. The darkness itself seemed to come alive. Deep inside the UNS Aegis, Lieutenant Pierce watched the tactical display fill with blue symbols until almost no empty space remained. His breathing slowed. History books had called humanity a minor power. The Galactic Council had declared Earth primitive. The Drakari believed they were sailing toward an easy conquest. None of them had ever imagined this. Admiral Elias Ward's voice echoed across every hidden fleet in the solar system. Calm, steady, unshakable. All Atlas formations. A brief pause followed. The silence felt heavier than any speech. Then came the order generations had been waiting to hear. Bring the fleet home. Across the solar system, millions of engines ignited together. For the first time in nearly 2 centuries, humanity's true navy began to move. The first thing the galaxy noticed was not the fleet. It was the silence. Every listening post surrounding the Sol system suddenly lost contact with its automated probes. Merchant relays stopped transmitting. Long-range observation satellites went dark one after another, as though an invisible hand had reached across space and switched them off. Inside the Galactic Council's Communications Directorate, technicians stared in confusion. Signal loss in Sector 9. Another operator looked up. Multiple relays offline. Pirates? No. Solar interference? Negative. One by one, every explanation was rejected. The Sol system had simply vanished. Far beyond Pluto, thousands of hidden warships accelerated in perfect formation. There were no flashing navigation lights, no unnecessary transmissions, no triumphant speeches, only disciplined silence. Every captain had spent years rehearsing the same deployment. Every pilot knew exactly where to be. Every engineer monitored systems that had been maintained in secrecy for generations. From a distance, the fleet looked less like individual ships, and more like a single living organism awakening after a long sleep. At its center sailed the UNS Aegis. Its dark hull reflected almost no starlight. Its engines produced no visible exhaust. To alien eyes, it appeared less like a machine, and more like a shadow moving through space. Captain Miriam Holt stood on the bridge. Status. All battle groups reporting operational. Navigation. Course locked. Weapons. Fully charged. She nodded once. Maintain radio silence. No one questioned the order. Humanity had survived because it had learned that information could be more valuable than weapons. Every second the Imperium remained unaware was another second in humanity's favor. Meanwhile, the Drakari invasion fleet approached the outer edge of the solar system. Supreme Marshal Kaler observed the stars ahead through the panoramic viewport. Time to first contact? 6 hours. Excellent. General Rask smiled confidently. The humans still haven't mobilized. Another officer laughed. They're probably debating surrender. Soft laughter spread across the bridge. Only Kaler remained quiet. Something felt wrong. He couldn't explain why. Every report supported victory. Every intelligence file described humanity as technologically inferior. Yet instinct continued whispering that something was hidden beneath the surface. Finally he spoke. Launch reconnaissance drones. General Rask looked surprised. Against a primitive world? Kaler answered without taking his eyes off the stars. I would rather waste drones than soldiers. Dozens of advanced reconnaissance probes shot ahead of the Imperial fleet. Traveling at incredible speed, they crossed billions of kilometers toward the Sol system. Within minutes, the first probe reached the Kuiper belt. Its sensors immediately detected nothing. No warships, no stations, no defenses. The transmission seemed reassuring. Then, the feed abruptly ended. No explosion, no distress signal, no warning, just silence. The second probe disappeared 30 seconds later. then the third, then the fourth. Every reconnaissance drone vanished before transmitting useful data. General Rask frowned. Mechanical failure? The sensor officer shook his head. Impossible. Kaler's expression hardened. Something destroyed them. Deep within the asteroid field, Lieutenant Aaron Pierce watched dozens of red icons disappear from the tactical display. Enemy scouts eliminated. Captain Holt nodded. Any evidence we were detected? None. Hidden defense satellites had done exactly what they were designed to do. Each drone was destroyed by weapons that produced almost no detectable energy signature. No debris. No radiation burst. Nothing for enemy sensors to analyze. To the Imperium, the probes had simply ceased to exist. Back on Earth, President Amelia Hayes entered the Atlas command chamber. The room had transformed. Instead of peacetime analysts, hundreds of military officers now coordinated the largest fleet operation in human history. Massive holographic displays surrounded the chamber. Every hidden fleet, every orbital defense platform, every stealth satellite, every logistics convoy, everything moved together with astonishing precision. Director Maytan looked up. The Imperium has reached the outer system. Hayes nodded. They still don't know? No. Good. Ward stepped beside the central display. They've crossed the point of no return. Hayes understood immediately. There will be no negotiations. There never were. Across Earth, ordinary citizens continued living surprisingly normal lives. Schools remained open. Hospitals operated as usual. Public transportation never stopped. Most people had no idea that thousands of alien warships were already entering the solar system. Only one difference could be noticed. Every city occasionally heard emergency sirens, followed by calm public announcements. Routine civil defense exercise. Most people barely paid attention. They had heard those announcements all their lives. What they never knew was that none of those drills had been exercises. Humanity had quietly prepared every generation for this exact day. Underground shelters opened. Power grids shifted to protected networks. Medical reserves activated automatically. Entire continents transitioned into wartime logistics without creating public panic. The preparation had become part of everyday life. Near Jupiter, the first hidden defense line activated. Thousands of objects drifting among the Trojan asteroids suddenly changed course. To alien sensors, they had always appeared to be ordinary rocks. In reality, they were autonomous missile platforms. Each carried enough firepower to cripple a heavy cruiser. Each had waited decades without transmitting a single signal. Their targeting systems awakened simultaneously. Artificial intelligence calculated millions of firing solutions in seconds. Then, they waited. Humanity would not fire first. On the bridge of the Iron Dominion, an officer interrupted the silence. Marshal, long-range scans detect unusual gravitational fluctuations. Kaler turned immediately. Cause? Unknown. The tactical officer enlarged the readings. Tiny distortions rippled across empty space. Too regular to be natural. Too weak to identify. General Rask dismissed them. Probably unstable asteroid masses. Kaler wasn't convinced. Increasing. The distortions multiplied. Hundreds became thousands. Then tens of thousands. Almost as though entire objects were appearing from nowhere. Inside the UNS Aegis, Captain Holt watched the countdown reach its final minutes. Stealth field disengagement in 60 seconds. Lieutenant Pierce swallowed nervously. So this is it. Holt smiled faintly. This is the moment history changes. Across the hidden human fleet, every ship received the same transmission from Admiral Ward. There was no dramatic music. No patriotic slogans. Only calm professionalism. Remember your training. Protect the civilians. Protect each other. And remember. A brief pause followed. We are not fighting for conquest. We are fighting so no child on Earth ever has to wonder what freedom cost. The channel closed. Thousands of bridges fell silent. Many officers exchanged determined glances. Some whispered quiet goodbyes to families they might never see again. Others simply focused on their instruments. Every person understood the responsibility resting upon them. The countdown reached 0. Across billions of kilometers, the stealth fields surrounding humanity's hidden armada collapsed. Space itself seemed to shimmer. One battleship appeared, then another, then 50, then hundreds, then thousands. Dark silhouettes emerged from behind asteroids. Massive carriers unfolded from inside hollow moons. Fortress ships rose from beneath frozen oceans. Entire fleets materialized where alien maps had shown only empty space. On Imperial sensors, blue contact icons flooded the display so quickly that the tactical computers froze. Warning alarms screamed across every bridge. Officers stared in disbelief. One frightened sensor operator whispered, "Marshal, I think our scanners are malfunctioning." Kaler stepped toward the display. The computer finally finished processing. The estimated number of hostile vessels appeared, then immediately changed. Again. The number kept climbing. 500, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000. The calculation stopped only when the system exceeded its tracking capacity. A single message replaced the count. Unknown fleet size. For the first time in his military career, Supreme Marshal Kaler felt genuine fear, because the empty solar system he had come to conquer had just revealed an army large enough to challenge an empire. For 12 long seconds, no one aboard the Iron Dominion spoke. The tactical display, normally a masterpiece of order and precision, had dissolved into chaos. Blue symbols, representing unknown human warships, continued to multiply faster than the Imperial computers could identify them. The Drakari tactical AI attempted to classify the contacts. Error. Tried again. Unknown hull design. A third attempt. Database match. 0%. General Rask stared in disbelief. That's impossible. No civilization can build a fleet this large without being detected. Supreme Marshal Kaler remained silent. His instincts had been right. Humanity had never been weak. It had only been invisible. On the bridge of the UNS Aegis, Captain Miriam Holt watched the enemy formation hesitate. "They've stopped advancing." Lieutenant Aaron Pierce allowed himself a small smile. "They're shocked." "No," Holt replied calmly. "They're calculating. And a dangerous enemy is always most dangerous when it's thinking." Across the fleet, encrypted channels remained disciplined. No unnecessary chatter. No celebrations. Every human commander understood one thing. The reveal was only the beginning. The real battle had not yet started. Deep within Atlas Command beneath the Alps, Admiral Elias Ward observed both fleets. The holographic map stretched across the entire chamber. Blue represented humanity. Red represented the Imperium. The difference in numbers was no longer dramatic. It was overwhelming. President Amelia Hayes looked toward Ward. "They know now." Ward nodded. "Yes, but they still don't know everything." General Sofia Navarro smiled. "They haven't seen the Iron Guard." Ward looked at her briefly. "Not yet." Back aboard the Iron Dominion, emergency strategy conferences erupted across every command deck. General Rask slammed a fist onto the command table. "Our intelligence was worthless." Another admiral shook his head. "This wasn't an intelligence failure. This was deception." Kaler finally spoke. "Not deception. Discipline." Every officer turned toward him. "They hid this fleet for generations. They sacrificed prestige. They accepted ridicule. They allowed the galaxy to call them primitive, because they valued surprise more than pride." The bridge fell silent. No empire in known history had ever possessed that level of patience. Suddenly, a transmission arrived. It came from the human fleet. No encryption. No interference. No threats. The signal appeared simultaneously on every Imperial vessel. An unfamiliar face appeared on the screen. Admiral Elias Ward. His expression was calm. His uniform carried no medals except one silver phoenix. His voice was steady. You have entered sovereign human territory. You were expected. You still have an opportunity to leave. General Rask burst into laughter. You expect us to retreat? Ward didn't react. We expect you to make a choice. Kaler leaned forward. What kind of choice? Ward answered without hesitation. Go home, or become the lesson your descendants study for the next 1,000 years. The transmission ended. No dramatic music. No insults. Only silence. General Rask laughed again. Arrogant. Kaler, however, didn't laugh. He replayed the message. There had been no anger, no desperation, only confidence. The confidence of someone who already knew the outcome. That frightened him more than the fleet itself. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council finally realized something was terribly wrong. Emergency communications flooded into Asterion. Merchant captains reported enormous military movements. Listening stations reported disappearing signals. Independent explorers claimed impossible numbers of human warships had appeared throughout the Sol system. Inside the Hall of Stars, chaos erupted. High Chancellor Varek stood. Order! Delegates shouted over one another. Impossible! Humanity doesn't possess those resources. Our intelligence confirms it. How did we miss this? The chamber's central hologram suddenly updated. Instead of showing Earth as a minor regional power, the projection displayed thousands of military contacts surrounding the solar system. Silence spread across the chamber. A reptilian ambassador whispered, "We called them primitive." No one answered. Far from the council, Commander Zell aboard the Taylor observation vessel finally understood what he had sensed weeks earlier. His sensors now showed the impossible. Entire fleets emerging from hidden locations. Stealth stations appearing from empty space. Weapons platforms activating inside asteroid belts. He whispered to himself, "I wasn't imagining it." He immediately transmitted an emergency report. Human military strength exceeds all previous estimates. This time, the Dominion responded within seconds. Back inside the Sol system, the first Imperial formation cautiously advanced. Only 20 destroyers. A test. Probe. Kaler wanted to measure the human response before committing his main fleet. Captain Holt observed the movement. They're testing us. Lieutenant Pierce looked toward her. Permission to engage? Holt shook her head. Not yet. Instead, she opened a fleet-wide channel. Formation Delta. Move. Nothing else. Hundreds of sleek human ships changed position with breathtaking precision. No confusion. No overlapping paths. No delay. Within moments, the destroyers found themselves surrounded from 3 different vectors. Imperial officers blinked in confusion. How? They crossed that distance in seconds. The human fleet had not attacked. They had simply peered. Kaler watched carefully. They're hurting us. General Rask scoffed. They're bluffing. Kaler's voice hardened. No. They're demonstrating control. Before anyone could answer, another signal reached the Imperial bridge. This one contained no words, only tactical data. The human fleet had somehow mapped every Imperial ship, every weapons system, every engine signature, every command vessel. Even the personal flagship of Supreme Marshal Kaler flashed on the human display. General Rask turned pale. How do they know all this? Kaler answered quietly. They've been watching us. 4 years. Inside Atlas Command, Director Maytan smiled slightly. The Imperium has received the intelligence package. President Hayes looked surprised. We gave them our targeting data? Ward nodded. Exactly. General Navarro laughed softly. Psychological warfare. Ward folded his arms. They now understand something important. They are not facing an enemy reacting to an invasion. They are facing an enemy that has already studied every move they'll make. The psychological effect spread rapidly through the Imperial fleet. Confidence began giving way to uncertainty. Officers who had expected an easy conquest now questioned every order. Pilots tightened their grips on flight controls. Weapons crews nervously rechecked targeting systems. The Imperium had entered the solar system believing itself to be the hunter. Now, suddenly felt like prey. Then, without warning, a massive object emerged from behind Jupiter. At first, Imperial sensors assumed it was a moon. Then the object accelerated. Entire fleets shifted course to avoid it. The tactical AI struggled to identify its dimensions. Length, 32 kilometers. Classification, unknown. Weapons, calculation impossible. The colossal vessel slowly rotated toward the invading armada. Its armored hull bore the silver phoenix of humanity. Captain Holt looked at the tactical display. "They've awakened," Lieutenant Pierce whispered. "The Iron Guard." For nearly 2 centuries, only rumors had existed. Even many human officers believed they were myths. Now 6 fortress ships emerged from the darkness. Each one carried enough firepower to challenge an entire battle group. Each one had been built from technologies recovered from the ancient battlefield beyond known space. On the bridge of the Iron Dominion, even General Rask could no longer hide his fear. "What are those?" Kaler stared silently through the viewport. For the first time in decades, the legendary conqueror of worlds realized he had marched his empire directly into a trap that had been prepared, not for months, not for years, but for almost 200 years. And somewhere, deep within the hidden command vault beneath Earth, one final sealed chamber slowly opened. Inside rested a single vessel unlike anything else in humanity's arsenal. Its engines remained dormant. Its hull carried scars that were millions of years old. Above its docking cradle, a simple inscription glowed in white letters. Project Sentinel. Authorization required. President of Earth. The greatest secret of humanity had not yet entered the war. No one fired. Not at first. Across the vast darkness beyond Jupiter, 2 of the largest military forces in known history faced one another in absolute silence. Millions of lives rested on the decisions of only a handful of commanders. On one side stood the Drakari Imperium, undefeated for nearly 4 centuries. On the other, a civilization the galaxy had dismissed as primitive. Supreme Marshal Kaler slowly exhaled. "Open a channel." Moments later, Admiral Elias Ward appeared once again on the tactical display. Kaler studied the human admiral carefully. "You've hidden your strength well," Ward answered calmly. "It wasn't hidden. You simply never looked." Kaler allowed himself the faintest smile. "Perhaps. But understand this, Admiral. The Imperium has never retreated." Ward nodded. "I know. Then today," Kaler leaned forward, "will become another chapter in our history." Ward's expression never changed. "No. It will become the last chapter of yours." The transmission ended. There would be no more negotiations. Throughout the Imperial fleet, alarms sounded. Battle stations. Thousands of warships accelerated together, their engines blazing like newborn stars. Carrier groups deployed fighter wings. Heavy cruisers powered their plasma cannons. Siege battleships rotated toward firing positions. The invasion fleet transformed into a wall of steel stretching millions of kilometers across space. General Rask raised his hand. "Primary batteries. Fire!" Thousands of crimson energy lances erupted from the Imperial formation. The first volley was powerful enough to vaporize entire cities. It crossed the darkness with terrifying speed. Lieutenant Aaron Pierce watched the incoming barrage from the bridge of the UNS Aegis. His heart pounded. So many. Captain Miriam Holt remained perfectly still. "Execute Maneuver Echo." Instead of charging, the human fleet separated. Thousands of ships moved with impossible precision. Entire formations folded around the incoming barrage like water flowing around stone. Imperial targeting computers immediately began issuing error messages. Targets disappeared. New formations emerged. Predicted flight paths became meaningless. The massive volley that should have crippled humanity struck almost nothing. Only empty space. General Rask stared at the tactical display. "They dodged everything?" Kaler shook his head. "No. They planned for it." Admiral Ward raised one hand. "First wave." Across the hidden fleet, No massive superweapon activated. No impossible energy beam tore across space. Instead, hundreds of small attack squadrons accelerated independently. Each group contained only 12 ships. Fast, silent, deadly. Imperial officers laughed. They're attacking with escorts? But the laughter quickly died. The human ships ignored the largest battleships. Instead, they targeted communication relays, sensor arrays, engine clusters, electronic warfare platforms. Within minutes, entire Imperial formations became isolated. Orders stopped arriving. Targeting data disappeared. Navigation systems began conflicting with one another. Humanity wasn't trying to destroy the fleet. It was dismantling it. Marshal Kaler understood immediately. They're attacking our coordination. General Rask slammed the command console. They're avoiding decisive combat. Kaler answered quietly. No. This is decisive combat. Across the battlefield, thousands of Imperial fighters launched toward the human fleet. Black clouds of interceptors surged through space. Captain Holt watched them approach. Release the Ravens. Hidden compartments along the hull of the UNS Aegis opened. Hundreds of sleek autonomous drones poured into space. Unlike conventional fighters, the Ravens had no pilots. They reacted faster than any living being could. Within seconds, they collided with the Imperial attack wave. Explosions lit the darkness. Pieces of burning metal drifted between the stars. The battle had truly begun. Near Saturn, the third human battle group encountered 3 Imperial heavy cruisers attempting to flank Earth's outer defenses. Commodore Daniel Okafor observed the enemy formation. No heroics. We hold the line. His ships formed a defensive wall around civilian evacuation routes. The Imperial cruisers opened fire. Blue shields flared across the human vessels. One destroyer absorbed a direct hit. Warning lights flooded its bridge. Reactor instability. The captain looked toward the escaping civilian convoy. 20 transport ships. Thousands of families. He made his decision. Transfer all remaining power to forward shields. His first officer looked horrified. Sir, we won't survive. The captain smiled. They will. His destroyer moved directly into the enemy firing lane. The next barrage struck his ship. The shields collapsed. The reactor overloaded. A brilliant explosion filled space. The civilian convoy escaped. Commodore Okafor lowered his head. Then quietly said, "Record their names. They'll be remembered." Back near Jupiter, the 6 fortress ships of the Iron Guard finally entered combat. Each one advanced with agonizing slowness. Imperial admirals initially believed them to be easy targets. They concentrated fire. Thousands of heavy weapons struck the lead fortress. The battlefield disappeared inside a storm of explosions. When the smoke cleared, the ship remained untouched. Its armor glowed faintly before returning to its normal dark color. General Rask whispered, "Impossible." The fortress answered, not with words. Its forward batteries slowly opened. 3 enormous accelerator cannons extended from beneath armored plating. Captain Holt watched the targeting feed. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The cannons fired. There was no brilliant flash. No thunder. Only 3 nearly invisible streaks crossing the darkness. 3 Imperial battleships simply stopped existing. No explosion. No debris field. The projectiles passed completely through them before continuing into deep space. Silence spread across every Imperial command deck. One shot. 3 capital ships destroyed. Inside Atlas Command, General Navarro observed the battlefield. The Iron Guard has entered. President Hayes remained focused. What about casualties? Director Maytan answered. Lower than projected. Ward nodded slowly. They're adapting. The Imperial fleet was learning. Faster than expected. Already, enemy formations were changing tactics. Already, commanders were abandoning predictable attack patterns. Ward knew what that meant. The hard part begins now. Marshal Kaler stood motionless before the tactical display. Despite heavy losses, His fleet still outnumbered humanity's active frontline forces. He wasn't defeated. Not yet. He pointed toward the center of the battlefield. Order the 5th and 9th battle groups forward. General Rask looked surprised. Our reserves? Yes. We'll force them into a direct engagement. Thousands of fresh Imperial warships accelerated into combat. The battlefield doubled in size. Captain Holt saw the movement. They're committing everything. Lieutenant Pierce swallowed. They're trying to overwhelm us. Holt nodded. Exactly. A secure transmission appeared on her console. From Admiral Ward. Only 2 words. Begin hammerfall. Her eyes widened slightly. So. It's time. Across the battlefield, hundreds of human ships abruptly turned away. Imperial commanders smiled. They're retreating. Kaler's eyes narrowed. No. They're leading us somewhere. But it was already too late. Hidden behind the orbit of Jupiter, thousands of dormant defense platforms activated simultaneously. Ancient structures the Imperium had mistaken for frozen debris unfolded into massive weapon arrays. Countless missile silos emerged from within hollow asteroids. Gigantic rail batteries rotated toward the approaching Imperial reserves. Artificial intelligences calculated millions of firing solutions in less than a second. On every human bridge, the same command echoed. Hammerfall authorized. The stars themselves seemed to ignite. Hundreds of thousands of guided projectiles erupted from the asteroid belt. Railgun slugs accelerated to impossible velocities. Missiles filled the darkness like a metallic storm. The Imperial Reserve Fleet flew directly into the trap. Warning alarms screamed across every Drakari vessel. Impact predictions climbed beyond calculation. For the first time in 400 years, the mighty Imperium realized it was no longer fighting a desperate civilization defending its home. It was fighting a species that had transformed its entire solar system into the largest fortress the galaxy had ever seen. And as the first wave of hammerfall descended upon the invading armada, deep beneath Earth's surface, President Amelia Hayes stood before the sealed vault of Project Sentinel. A biometric scanner illuminated her face. A calm artificial voice echoed through the chamber. Final authorization required. Hayes placed her hand against the ancient control panel. The vault trembled. Locks that had remained sealed for nearly 2 centuries began to disengage. Whatever rested inside had never been intended for ordinary wars. This time had finally come. The darkness exploded into light. Operation Hammerfall struck with a precision no military strategist had ever imagined possible. From hidden launch silos buried inside ancient asteroids, from defense platforms disguised as frozen debris, from rail batteries concealed beneath the fractured crust of forgotten moons, humanity unleashed a storm that had been patiently prepared for nearly 2 centuries. Hundreds of thousands of hypersonic projectiles crossed the battlefield. Missiles changed direction in mid-flight, communicating with one another through quantum-linked targeting systems. Railgun slugs, traveling at a fraction of the speed of light, punched through multiple Imperial cruisers before finally losing momentum. Within seconds, the orderly formation of the Drakari Reserve Fleet collapsed. Entire squadrons vanished from tactical displays. Others desperately scattered, breaking the rigid battle doctrine that had made the Imperium nearly invincible for 400 years. On the bridge of the Iron Dominion, warning alarms blended into a continuous scream. Reserve Fleet 7 destroyed. Communications lost with Battle Group 9. Starboard carrier formation collapsing. Reports flooded across every screen faster than officers could read them. General Rask slammed both hands onto the command console. This isn't possible. They knew exactly where we'd be. Supreme Marshal Kaler remained unervingly calm. His eyes never left the tactical map. They're not predicting us. He spoke quietly. They're controlling us. The realization spread across the bridge like ice. Every movement the Imperium had made, every reinforcement, every flanking maneuver, had led them exactly where humanity wanted them. They had not entered a battle. They had entered a battlefield designed specifically for them. Inside Atlas Command, Admiral Elias Ward watched the engagement unfold. Blue and red symbols shifted continuously across the holographic display. General Sofia Navarro looked almost relieved. Hammerfall exceeded expectations. Ward shook his head. No. It performed exactly as expected. President Amelia Hayes studied the casualty reports. We've lost nearly 300 ships. Ward nodded respectfully. And every one of them bought time. He looked toward the center of the battlefield. But Kaler is adapting. Indeed, the Drakari commander was changing. Instead of stubbornly repeating old tactics, he began reorganizing his fleet into smaller autonomous groups. Imperial commanders started ignoring centralized formations. The enemy was learning. Fast. Too fast. Near Saturn, Commodore Daniel Okafor's battle group fought to hold a narrow corridor leading toward the inner planets. Imperial destroyers surged forward, trying to break through. Enemy closing. Distance. 12,000 kilometers. Okafor gave a single order. Hold. His officers exchanged nervous glances. Sir. They're within firing range. I know. The enemy closed further. 10,000 kilometers. 8,000. 6,000. Some officers instinctively reached for emergency controls. Still, Okafor waited. Finally, now, dozens of hidden gravity anchors activated simultaneously. Invisible waves distorted space itself. The charging Imperial formation suddenly lost control. Ships drifted sideways. Engines overloaded. Navigation systems collapsed. Human rail batteries opened fire. Within moments, the entire assault formation ceased to exist. Lieutenant Mira Chun looked across the battlefield in amazement. We've turned space itself into a weapon. Okafor allowed himself the smallest smile. No. We turned preparation into one. Elsewhere, the 6 colossal fortress ships of the Iron Guard continued advancing. Unlike conventional warships, they never rushed. They simply endured. Imperial battleships concentrated impossible amounts of firepower upon them. Entire salvos disappeared against their adaptive armor. Every minute they remained intact, more Imperial commanders lost confidence. One frightened Drakari captain whispered, "They're not ships. They're moving fortresses." Marshal Kaler finally understood the truth. Humanity had never intended to build the largest fleet. It had built the most coordinated one. Every defense platform supported nearby warships. Every drone shared targeting information instantly. Every ship could continue fighting independently if communications failed. Destroying one formation changed nothing, because the entire fleet thought as one. Kaler looked toward General Rask. "We underestimated their doctrine." Rask answered bitterly, "We underestimated everything." Then, a priority transmission arrived from the Galactic Council. High Chancellor Verex appeared on the bridge. His usually composed expression had vanished. "Marshal Kaler, the Council demands an immediate ceasefire." Kaler's eyes narrowed. "The Council has no authority over Imperial military operations." Verex ignored the interruption. "Our deep archives have confirmed something." He activated an ancient star map. Highlighted across it were dozens of forgotten systems. Each one matched locations where humanity had secretly established hidden outposts. Verex continued, "Those locations were once occupied by the civilization that disappeared millions of years ago." The bridge fell silent. Kaler stared at the map. "What are you saying?" The Chancellor swallowed. "We believe humanity discovered their ruins long before anyone else. And judging by what we've witnessed today, they learned from them." The transmission ended abruptly. For the first time, Kaler understood why humanity had remained hidden. They had not been preparing for the Imperium. The Imperium simply happened to arrive first. Deep beneath Earth's surface, President Amelia Hayes stood before the massive vault of Project Sentinel. Layer after layer of armored doors slid apart. A rush of ancient air escaped into the chamber. Inside rested a vessel unlike any human construction. Its hull was smooth, dark silver, covered in symbols no living human could fully translate. Despite being millions of years old, It looked brand new. Dr. Elena Sato stepped forward carefully. The restoration is complete. Hayes looked toward her. Can we control it? Dr. Sato hesitated. We don't know. We've repaired it. We've studied it. But no human has ever activated it. Hayes stared at the silent giant. So today, we find out. Above Earth, the battle reached its most violent stage. Imperial carriers launched one final massive assault. Thousands of fighters flooded toward humanity's defensive lines. Captain Miriam Holt watched the incoming wave. All batteries. Free fire. The UNS Aegis erupted with light. Laser interceptors. Rail cannons. Missile swarms. Defense drones. Everything fired together. Nearby human destroyers synchronized automatically. No shots overlapped. No ammunition was wasted. Every target received exactly the force required to eliminate it. Lieutenant Aaron Pierce could barely believe what he was witnessing. This isn't a fleet. Captain Holt answered quietly. It's an ecosystem. Back aboard the Iron Dominion, General Rask looked toward Kaler. Our losses exceed 40%. Several battle groups have ceased to exist. The fleet requests permission to withdraw. Kaler remained silent for a long moment. He had conquered hundreds of worlds. Never once had he considered retreat. But this was no ordinary defeat. He looked toward the distant blue star that warmed the Sol system. Earth, the world his empire had dismissed as primitive. A bitter smile crossed his face. We came here believing we were hunting prey. He slowly closed the tactical display. Instead, we awakened a sleeping giant. For the first time in 4 centuries, the Supreme Marshal of the Drakari Imperium prepared to issue an order no commander under his banner had ever spoken. But before the words could leave his mouth, every ship in both fleets detected the same impossible energy surge. It did not come from the human armada. It did not come from the Imperium. It came from Earth itself. Across the solar system, stars seemed to bend around a single point. Ancient symbols illuminated the hull of Project Sentinel as the vessel slowly rose from its underground cradle for the very first time. Every sensor in known space returned the same unbelievable result. Technology origin. Unknown. Estimated age. 3.2 million years. Even Admiral Ward stared silently at the readings. Because humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing to defend itself. But no one, not even Atlas Command, truly knew what Project Sentinel was capable of. And in the growing silence of the battlefield, the ancient vessel opened its eyes. For a single heartbeat, the battle stopped. Not because either side had ordered a ceasefire, but because every sensor, every computer, and every living mind aboard thousands of ships was focused on one impossible object rising from Earth. Project Sentinel. The ancient vessel emerged without engines, without visible propulsion, simply rose. A shimmering field of silver light surrounded its dark metallic hull, bending the stars themselves. Symbols unlike any known language flowed across its surface, glowing softly before fading again. Inside Atlas Command, complete silence filled the chamber. Dr. Elena Sato stared at the data streaming across her console. I don't understand. The reactor isn't generating power. President Amelia Hayes looked at her. Then what's moving it? Sato swallowed. It isn't producing energy. It's manipulating space. Aboard the UNS Aegis, Captain Miriam Holt watched in awe. Lieutenant Aaron Pierce whispered, Did we build that? Holt slowly shook her head. No, we only repaired it. Across the battlefield, panic spread through the Imperial fleet. Sensor officers desperately recalibrated their instruments. Nothing made sense. One officer looked toward Supreme Marshal Kaler. Our scanners cannot determine its weapon systems. Another interrupted. We cannot determine its mass. A third added quietly, Marshal, we can't even determine if it's entirely inside normal space. For the first time in his life, Kaler had no answer. Then, Project Sentinel transmitted. Not through radio, not through quantum communication, Every living being heard the same voice directly inside their mind. It was calm, ancient, neither male nor female. Identity confirmed. Custodians detected. Across Atlas Command, Dr. Sato's eyes widened. It's speaking to us. The voice continued. Species designation, human. Evaluation complete. Stewardship accepted. Around the galaxy, every translator failed. The message required no translation. Everyone understood it instinctively. A brilliant sphere of light expanded around the ancient vessel. Imperial targeting systems instantly shut down. Weapons lost power. Missiles froze in space. Railgun projectiles simply stopped moving. Across thousands of ships, engineers shouted in disbelief. We've lost weapons control. Reactors still online. Engines operational. Only offensive systems disabled. Captain Holt stared at her tactical display. The same thing had happened to humanity's fleet. No one could fire. The battlefield had been silenced. Inside the Iron Dominion, General Rask looked toward Kaler. What is this? Kaler answered honestly. I don't know. He had spent his life believing that strength came through conquest. Yet whatever stood before them possessed power beyond imagination, and it had not fired a single shot. The ancient voice echoed once more. Historical analysis complete. Images suddenly appeared before every ship in the system. Not holograms. Memories. Civilizations millions of years old. Worlds burning. Stars collapsing. An enemy unlike anything recorded in modern history sweeping across the galaxy. The ancient civilization had not vanished because it was weak. It had sacrificed itself to imprison something far worse. The final memory showed countless worlds united together, standing as one. Not through conquest, through cooperation. The vision ended. Silence followed. Dr. Elena Sato slowly understood. The crystal. The battlefield. They weren't warnings. President Hayes looked at her. They were instructions. Sato nodded. They wanted someone to learn. Someone patient enough to prepare. Without seeking power, the ancient voice spoke again. Evaluation complete. Drakari Imperium. Kaler looked up. Aggression confirmed. He closed his eyes. He already knew what came next. Instead, the voice surprised everyone. Opportunity for correction granted. General Rask looked stunned. They're sparing us? Project Sentinel slowly turned toward the Imperial fleet. The silver light surrounding it expanded until it embraced every Drakari vessel. One by one, destroyed ships began repairing themselves. Hull fractures closed. Life support systems restarted. Disabled engines came back online. Even damaged medical bays were restored. Human officers watched in disbelief. Lieutenant Pierce whispered, "It's healing them." Captain Holt smiled. "That's real strength." Marshal Kaler stood silently for several moments. Finally, he removed the insignia of Supreme Marshal from his uniform. He placed it on the command table. Then he opened every communication channel across the battlefield. His voice carried to every Imperial ship. Warriors of the Imperium, today we have been defeated. Not because humanity possessed greater weapons, but because they possessed greater wisdom. He looked toward Earth. I came here to conquer. Instead, I found a civilization worthy of respect. He lowered his head. The Imperium withdraws. Across thousands of Drakari ships, weapons remained silent. One after another, the invading fleet turned away from Earth. For the first time in 400 years, the Imperium retreated. Weeks later, the Hall of Stars was more crowded than ever before. Representatives from every known civilization filled the chamber. No laughter echoed through the room this time. No whispers. Only anticipation. High Chancellor Varex stepped forward. The next item, he smiled faintly, concerns the Sol system. The enormous holographic display changed. The old classification disappeared forever. Primitive world. Vanished. In its place appeared new words. Founding Guardian civilization. The chamber stood together. Not because protocol demanded it, but because respect did. President Amelia Hayes approached the center platform. She looked across hundreds of alien leaders. Then she spoke. When you first discovered us, you measured our worth by the size of our fleet. You measured our future by the age of our civilization. You believed strength meant the ability to force others to kneel. She paused. Humanity learned a different lesson. We spent 2 centuries preparing for war, so that one day, we might never have to fight one again. Complete silence filled the hall. We hid our fleet not because we feared the galaxy. We hid it because power without restraint becomes tyranny. And if humanity is remembered, I hope it is not because we won a battle. I hope it is because, when victory became certain, we chose peace. One by one, delegates rose from their seats. Then another, until every civilization in the hall stood together. Not in fear, in respect. Far above Earth, the fleets slowly departed. Human shipyards returned to quiet construction. Defense platforms resumed their silent watch. Children once again looked toward the stars with curiosity instead of fear. Commander Zell, aboard his observation vessel, transmitted one final report to the Taylor Dominion. He smiled as he finished the last sentence. History will remember that the galaxy called humanity primitive, right until humanity reminded us what civilization truly meant. On the bridge of the UNS Aegis, Lieutenant Aaron Pierce looked through the great observation window as the sun rose over the blue curve of Earth. Captain Holt joined him. Beautiful, isn't it? Pierce nodded. Do you think another war will come? Holt looked toward the endless stars. Someday, the universe is far too large for permanent peace. Pierce sighed. Then we'll have to build even bigger fleets. Holt laughed softly. No. She placed a hand on his shoulder. We'll have to build stronger friendships. Far beyond the edge of the galaxy, in the cold darkness between galaxies, a faint crimson light flickered inside an ancient structure drifting through the void. Dust that had remained undisturbed for millions of years slowly lifted. A single mechanical eye opened. Then another. An ancient voice echoed through the darkness. Sentinel, activated. Humanity, located. The stars fell silent, because somewhere beyond everything humanity had ever known, something else had finally awakened. The end rocket,